So today in this video, we're going to put together our TikTok clock, and we're going to begin with something non-paper related. You're going to want to find this piece among the pieces that you have cut out. This is a template that we're going to use to cut a little bit of some foam board. And the foam board is to sort of sturdy up the face of the clock. Now, if you don't have your hands on the foam board, maybe just cut out 4 or 5 of these pieces and glue them together. And that's just going to help stabilize the little mechanism that we have to put through here, because you are going to need to get a little mechanism in order to make this thing actually work. So just get an X-Acto knife, make sure you have a surface that you can cut on, and don't worry too much about making this perfect because it's going to be hidden inside of your actual clock. So just nice straight strokes, and do your best. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. We're going to end up either hot gluing or just gluing this to the surface, and I'm just going to tear that off. Just do your best to cut around this little template, and it's going to help sturdy up our clock. And we need to cut the little hole out as well, so make sure you don't forget that. Okay, so we can discard that. And then again, use the little template here to cut the hole out. Probably would create just a cross-like cut right down the center, just so you can kind of work one little section at a time. And probably want to cut away so that you don't end up cutting yourself. And just gotta get the basic gist of the circle, and then we can move the template out of the way and kind of punch that out. And again, don't worry about this being perfect. No one's gonna see this except for you. And just get that little part out of the center, and you can kind of clean it up a little bit more if you want. Just get that out of there. Create a nice little hole to put your actual mechanism through there. Okay, and if you want, you can kind of cut it at a little bit of an angle to give it a little bit of a bevel. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as the hole is in the general vicinity. Everything's going to be covered up nicely, so don't worry too much about it. Just make sure that it's nice and flat and flush on both sides. Okay, that's fine. I did a really bad job of that, but that's okay. We'll do our best work where it really counts, and I like to start off with things like this just to kind of get into the flow of crafting. All right, I'm pretty much done with that. I'm gonna get rid of my scraps here, and we'll just go over some of the pieces here. And actually, you can glue this on here if you want to add even more stability. I think that's as stable as it's going to get, so it's not necessary, but if you want to pretty it up so that when you see it from the inside, you see that instead of the foam core, you can do that. That's totally fine. Let's take a look at some of the pieces here, just so that we know what goes where. There's no confusion. Okay, you're going to have 2 rectangles. Okay, and now if you look at the photo of this clock, you'll notice that the base is wider, the top is shorter. This is the bottom of the base. This is the top of the top. Okay, you'll see 2 pieces like this. You should be able to see the score lines on there nicely. This is for the bottom, so let's put that with the bottom piece. This is for the top, so let's put that with the top piece. Okay, and then we're going to see a series of pieces like this. Okay, and you'll notice that these 2 are a little bit wider. These are a little bit shorter, so of course, the shorter ones are going to go at the top. The wider ones are going to go at the bottom. Okay, and the clock itself is assembled in 3 parts: the top, the bottom, and then the center, which I have here. Now let's take a look at the pieces for the center. Let me just scooch this out of the way. That is a little liner piece. It's going to go at the bottom. This is the back of our clock, which we have a little door here so that you can replace the batteries on the clock should you need to. And then there's the back. Okay, and we actually have 2 layers for this. Let's kind of sturdy that up. And then the face. Okay, so that's just going to create the actual structure. And then, of course, we have some panels and the clock face and some additional little, these pieces here, which we've cut out of this graphic 45 pattern paper. These are the little trim pieces for the top and bottom, as well as for the portion just below the actual base, so kind of keep those all together. And we've got the face here on the front, the 2 sides, which I've actually inked with brown. This is a graphic 45 paper as well, and I did ink these. Okay, so I mean the ink kind of goes with the whole style of the paper, so I noticed that I could go a little crazy with the ink on this and not worry too much about it being perfect because it blends very nicely. Okay, and then we also have the panels for the top and the bottom. These are additional panels. We've got a cool little stripe pattern here that I've also inked in a brown. Okay, and then we have our clock face. It's two layers. We've got this peach or tan color with the actual clock numbers, and then a series of gears and other random shapes. So at this point, let's just go ahead and begin by putting some of the panels on some of the pieces here so that we can work on them while they're flat. It's just going to be easier that way. Okay, so this is the face of our clock here, and I'm going to begin with that. So before I do, I'm going to go ahead and fold everything at the score marks just to get everything nice and properly trained. And we can also use the lines that we've created from the folding as a guide for placement of our panels. Okay, so let's begin by putting the main panel on here. And of course, we're going to use the little hole in the center as a guide for placement. You also want to make sure that you have it lined up correctly and that there's a nice even border going all the way around this panel here. So let's get our glue on this piece nice and thin. We don't need too much. And you definitely want to make sure that you're getting that glue out to the very edge here. And of course, I have a new bottle of glue that I haven't used in a while, and I need to clean it up really quick because it's a little clogged. So get our glue on this panel here, and of course we want to make sure that we're getting enough glue out along the edge so that we don't get any of that section peeling up. And I'm going to just go ahead and dab some of this right at the edge so that I don't get any weird looking lines, and it stays nicely for us. So again, just place that down right over the hole and make sure that you've got a nice even border going all the way around, and press that down. Okay, and next we're going to put the little panel on this side here. So just repeat the process as far as the glue goes. Get your glue on there. And again, just get a little bit right along the edge there. Got a little too much there. Let me clean that up. And let's get that in place. And if you have a pattern on yours, go ahead and make sure that you have it right side up. You don't want it upside down. And our clock is being built using a black base, and the glue sometimes has a tendency to show up a lot more on black. So just be careful and make sure you don't make a huge mess with the glue. Okay, so this is the back of the main part of our clock. Let's get all the tabs nice and folded. Okay, just like that. And let's get our panel on here. Nice and easy with the glue. All the way around that border. And just make sure that you have it right side up if you have a pattern. And nice and centered. There we go. Yeah, it's pretty good. It might be off just a tad, but that's okay. All right, so we've got the two sides of this pretty much put together. And now what we're going to do is we're going to connect these two sides together. And we're going to put glue on this tab here. Okay. And get that connected to our neighbor. Let's get that line of glue right up to the edge and spread that out. Okay. And if you have a nice surface that's protected, you can go ahead and use it to your advantage. And just get it nice and lined up. Make sure that it's lined up on top and on the bottom. And then we can push this tab over. Okay, let it get its initial hold and then flip it on top of itself. And just make sure that that is nice and lined up there, which mine is. Okay, so we've got a nice seam there. That looks good. Okay, great. So now before we actually close this thing up, we can go ahead and put this piece in here, and maybe a good idea just to make sure that, and you can do so by flipping these tabs over, just make sure that it fits nicely and it's not obstructing anything, in which case mine is. And I'm just going to take my X-Acto and I'm going to clean this up a little bit more. It's okay if this hole is a little bit bigger, because the platform of the actual clock face is flat and it's going to sit on this part of the surface. We just want to make sure that we have a big enough hole for that to sit on. Okay, so that looks good. Again, just make sure that you're not obstructing that hole. And I am going to go ahead and just glue this on. It's paper on paper, so it should hold nicely. And just center it, make sure that that hole is not obstructed, and give that some time to dry. Kind of almost had one of the tabs here on the side obstructed, but I don't anymore, so we're good. Just make sure that this thing folds easily. Okay, and give that a second to dry. Okay, and now while that's actually drying, I'm going to add this little piece on top of this just to kind of clean it up and make it look nice and polished. So let's get our glue on this piece here. And again, no one's going to see this piece from the outside. They may see it from the inside, which is why we're doing this. We just want to kind of clean this up a little bit and make it look nice. Don't worry about perfection at this stage. It's not really. I guess you really shouldn't think about perfection at any stage. Just do your best. As long as you do your best, it will be perfect. Okay, so clock face, or the actual clock body, is pretty much done here. And we're going to go ahead and glue this closed using this tab here. Okay, so let's get our glue on this tab here. I'm going to get it all on there, and then we're going to do one fine little line close to the edge, and I'm going to spread that out nice and thin right up to the edge there. Get a nice clean seam. Okay, and oops, should have folded that. Let's just do that real quick before it dries, and just get that nice and lined up. And just get your fingers in there, nudge this in a little bit if you have to, and just push that down and squeeze the two pieces together to get that glue to adhere. Just like that. If you have a little area that maybe didn't get a good grip, we can always go back in and fix it, so it's not the end of the world. Okay, and let's take a look here. I've got one little section here at the top that I probably could have done a little bit of a better job on, in which case we can grab just a scrap piece of cardstock or just anything really thin. I've got just a piece of the mounting stuff for my Zots, and I'm just going to dab a tiny little bit of glue on it just on one side and just rub that underneath right on the paper and push that down and hold it right in that little spot until it gets a good hold. Okay, that looks good. All right, so now we can go ahead and close the top or the bottom. Doesn't matter which one we do at this point. Our little foam piece is in there. Everything is looking great. So let's do our top. What we're gonna do is just put glue on all three of these tabs. Okay. Make sure you get that glue right out to the edge. I gotta work kind of quick here. This is the first project from our new clock bundle, and I took a few days off from crafting, and I'm kind of just getting back into the groove here. Sometimes it takes a little bit to find that groove with your glue and with your process, but you eventually get right back into it. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and close that up. And just make sure that you get it nice and aligned all the way around. You may need to kind of pull and nudge and kind of move things around in order to get it in the right spot. There we go. That's looking good. And just be patient while that all sets. And again, if you've got a few little spots that maybe aren't holding as well as you had hoped, you can always go back in and just drop a little bit of glue in there and just give those little areas, specific little areas, a little extra TLC, and just hold those down while they dry. Now this part here, that's going to be covered up because we're going to put the tops on. We're going to put the top on this part and then the bottom on that part, but we still want it to be nice and flush so that it sits on there nicely for us. Okay, so now that we have the top in place, do the same thing to the bottom. Just get our glue on these tabs here and close it up nicely. And then we've got one more piece to put on the back of this before we move on and work on the top and bottom. We'll end up putting the little mechanism in last and decorating it with all of the little gears and stuff towards the end. We don't want those to get disturbed while we're kind of jostling this thing around. So let's avoid that if we can. And get our glue right out to that edge there. This glue bottle is not being my best friend right now, but that's okay. Just kind of painting that glue into the little areas that I want it. Okay, let's go ahead and close this up. This side should be easier now because the box sort of understands what its ultimate form should be, so this part should go a lot easier. Shouldn't have to do much adjusting or... Okay. All right, so just get that bottom piece on there, and then we'll kind of continue on here. Okay, so we've got it pretty much assembled here. Now this piece here, we're going to put this right on the back, and we're going to glue that down. This is going to be our little door. There's a little piece that we're going to put on here to help you kind of grip the door. So you want to put glue on the back of this and get that glued into place. Let me clean off my... Actually, you know what? Before we do that, so let's get our glue on this piece here. You don't want to put any glue on the door, obviously. You want that to swing freely, and then get a nice line out towards the edge. Okay. And let's get that onto the back. Get it on there nicely and evenly all the way around. And that's going to help sturdy this piece up even more. And it'll kind of complete the look. You can fold this in and get your hand in there a little bit to make sure that part sets nicely. Okay, so there's that. And we also have a little liner piece here. You can put that on the bottom if you want, since we're going to be layering it up, but I think that the best place to probably put it is on the inside. So just take your glue bottle and just put a few dabs of glue on the bottom there. You probably won't be able to see this, but I've got it in there, and just slide that in and push it down. There we go. That's good. Okay. All right, so the base of this thing is pretty much done. We can actually work on decorating the front of this. So we've got these two pieces here. We're going to glue these on. It doesn't matter where it goes. Just want to make sure that we get it on there. Now with a project like this, with so many really flat surfaces, if you want to try to use some repositionable spray glue, you know, the glue that comes in a little can that you can spray, you can try that if you want. I guess I just never bought the repositionable stuff, and I've had some bad experiences with it because it's not forgiving, and I like the glue. The regular glue's fine. As long as you have good control, it should just do the job for you. And it kind of helps you work on your fine motor controls, and I guess that's good for your health. Keeps you young. Okay, so let's get that on there. Again, it doesn't matter where and how it's glued to that piece because it's just a circle, and we can rotate it however we want to. Okay, so we've got that in place. Okay. All right, next we're going to put this brown piece on here. That's going to go right in the center. Just get our glue on there. Get a little bit out to the edge. And again, it's just a circle, so as long as you're not obstructing that center cutout there, you're fine. Do your best to get that as centered as possible. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's quite rainy here in Chicago. Get that excess glue off of there. Okay, that's looking pretty sharp. All right, and then we've got a little gear that we're going to glue on here as well. We had a lot of crazy fog yesterday too. Okay. So again, just make sure you're not obstructing that center hole and get that glued in place. It's all pretty much symmetrical, so it should be able to go on anyway. Oops, there was an explosion. Let's wipe that off and start fresh here. Okay. And I'm going to lift this up. It might be just a little bit easier to work with that way. There we go. Okay, if you had a little excess glue that came out, just kind of dab it off or scrape it off, whatever you need to do. Okay, great. All right, so there it is. And this piece, of course, is going to go right onto our clock here. And it's going to get glued flat onto the clock. We want to make sure that the 12 is nice and centered there. Okay, so just kind of eyeball it. That should do the job. And you can go ahead and get that glued on. Just make sure that you get a nice ring of glue around the outer part of this little circle here. And again, just make sure that the 12 is right at the top, nice and centered, not obstructing that hole. We've got that hole perfectly sized to fit the little mechanism. There we go. And I know in the graphic 45 world, a lot of people take old clocks and, you know, with like decoupage, they grab the graphic 45 paper and kind of repurpose them. Not repurpose, but just give them a new look with the papers. But you don't have to do that with this. You can kind of make it all your own with all your own colors and patterns and whatever you want to do, okay? So that is that. There's a couple more pieces that we're gonna put on here, and this paper's patterned, so it's a little hard to tell, but there are a series of notches cut into this to help you with the placement of some of the pieces. Okay, so in my case, I'm gonna put these gears, some of these gears, flat on here, and then a few of them we're going to pop dot. Okay, so as far as the alignment goes on these little gears, this is how it should ultimately end up, okay, in this sequence. You can move these around if you want. It doesn't need to be this way, but as far as the design goes, if you want to do it this way, you can. Now for this piece here, you'll notice that there's a set of little marks over here, and they're kind of like round little cuts, little nicks. And for all of these pieces, those little cutouts and little nicks are to be aligned with the inner portions of the gears. Okay, so there's one here, and there's one here, and let me point to it more precisely. There's one here, and that's gonna go on the inner part of this, and on the inner part of this. Okay, so that is how that goes, and you'll notice that there's another one here, and then another one here, and that automatically will line up with its neighbor there. Okay, so that's kind of where that one goes. So let's just do these one at a time here, just so we don't mess anything up. So you can definitely recreate it as it was designed, or if you want to move the gears around, if you want to pop dot them or zot them and give it your own feel, you're welcome to do that, obviously. And I'm just going to add a few little dots around this gear. There's little tiny little areas here where the actual gear heads are. You just got to be patient with that. And again, just match that up with the little guides that we've provided. Okay. And they're a little hard to see, especially on like patterned paper, but you'll eventually get it. Okay, so that is where that one goes. This one's a little bit easier here at the bottom. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little cutouts here, one for each side of this little round bean shape. Okay, well, there's 2 for each of the beans, 1 for each side of the bean. Okay, so I'm just going to do little dots on this. And this glue bottle is very random today. That's okay. Clean that off. And again, just get those little guides on the inside here where the cutouts are. And it's a little more difficult for me because I'm trying to keep my head out of the camera. So yours will probably end up looking better than mine. Okay, this one here has a set of 3. There's this one here, and this one here. I apologize if you can't see it, but just get the middle one aligned with the middle circle, and then there's 2 more to help you with the alignment of the 2 circles that are on either side of the middle circle. Okay, so let's just get that nice and aligned. I'm gonna bring this a little bit closer in here. And just get that nice and aligned there. That's good. Okay. And then there's another one here and here. And that is for this little gear here. You're just going to align that with the center of our little gear. Pop that right in the middle. There we go. And that just leaves this guy here. And again, the little score marks are, there's one here and one here, one here and one here. And it's going to go on like that. Okay, so the score marks should line up with the little edges of the rounded areas here on the inside. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you have certain paper, if you're using cardstock, you're going to see it a lot better. On this pattern paper, it's pretty difficult to see unless you have it in a certain light. So I'm not really going to try to show you. as you probably won't see it anyway, but do your best to get that nice and lined up, get a visual on how it should line up, and that's pretty good right there. Okay, now there are 2 more gears here, like that. I'm going to take and I'm going to pop dot that one, or use some foam squares, and I'm going to zot that right there, and I'm going to zot this one right here. So they're all kind of connecting, okay? I'm going to do that later, and when we actually are done putting the top and bottom of this on. We've got one more little gear up here, and that's going to go right up at the top. And we just want to pop that guy right there. There's a little cross shape cut out there to help you with the alignment on that. Okay, so that pretty much completes the inner portion of our clock. Now we can go ahead and assemble the top and bottom, and before you know it, we'll be done. Now, one other thing you can do if you want, this little gear here is going to get glued on to this little guy here. Just going to put one little drop of glue on here and kind of bat that down a little bit, and throw our little gear on here, and that's going to help. It's going to give us a little bit of a handle that we can use to pull this back to open it up. Okay, let's let this thing really dry. We'll come back and revisit it once we're ready to put the top and bottom on. Okay, and let's take a look at this would be the top, okay? And again, we've got this main portion, this main piece here. And what we want to do is just begin by getting everything nice and folded. Okay, it's going to look like that. Get all your pieces nice and folded and ready. Okay. Let me help to kind of fold it back a little bit. So this is the front, back, top, and then these are the 2 sides. And we're going to glue all those together. But before we do, we're going to put our little panels on here so that we can do it while it's flat. It'll help us with alignment, and it'll just make the project prettier. I don't have to worry about creasing it or destroying it. Okay. Get all of our tabs nice and folded. I missed a couple here on this side. Okay. So it's going to be like this. This is the actual top. It kind of folds in like that. Now this piece here, this really thin part, is where we're going to use these pieces. Okay. So we're not actually going to put anything on there yet. We're going to do that last. But we are going to put our little striped panels on here. Okay, so let's find those. There's one there. Okay, and then let's find the other one for that piece. There it is. Okay, so that's going to get glued there. And then we've got this piece here. Let me find the 2 that go onto this, and that is going to go right there. And the other one is going to go right here. Okay, so it's towards the inside part of this. Okay, so towards the pieces that you want to. These are tabs here, by the way. Okay, those are tabs. This is actually going to be exposed. You can kind of see how that's going to look. That's the bottom. So you want to put them on this part here. So let's get those panels in place. Just glue them on, nice and easy. And I know my friend Chris from Florida is shaking her head as I perform that little motion to get the glue out of my bottle, because I'm not holding it upside down, but that's because my little glass is MIA right now, because you can't see it, but the other half of my studio is a complete wreck right now, because I just finished remodeling the studio, and I really wanted to use it ASAP, and in order to do that, I had to clean up one side but leave the other side a mess, and somewhere in the process that little bottle disappeared, but it's not gone. It's still around. I just temporarily misplaced it. All right, so let's get our other piece on. Let's get that glued on. Oh, that was maybe a little too much there, and not enough there. Okay. And again, just do your best to get that nice and centered on there, both vertically and horizontally. There we go. Okay. Had a little extra glue come out of there, but that's okay. You can kind of rub it off before it sets, and it shouldn't cause me any problems. Okay, so that's looking sharp, and we'll just go ahead and repeat that process with these smaller sections here. And we'll get this guy built, and we'll build the bottom, and then we can go ahead and piece this thing together, put our little mechanism in there, and watch our clock tick. It was a cute little gift to make someone, I don't know, for retirement, or someone that loves clocks. You can do this for New Year's as a decoration or a centerpiece. I'm sure you guys are going to come up with a ton of different ideas and ways of using this, so can't wait to see what you come up with. All right, so there's that one. Last but not least, we've got one more here, and then we can go ahead and begin constructing this. Okay, so in order to construct this guy here, I'm going to put these down so that these smaller tabs are facing towards this center part here. We're going to glue these tabs right onto this piece here. Okay, it's going to create one solid piece, and then we can assemble and piece together and construct this little piece here. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck this under real quick just to get it out of the way for a second. And you want to go ahead and get your glue on this little tab here and get it out to the edge. Okay, and we'll go ahead and just get it nice and aligned and centered, and flip it over. Let it partially set, and then we can go ahead and flip it under and fold it, and then just kind of scooch it around, oops, until it's nice and centered there. Okay, get it nice and aligned there, nice and centered. Let's take a look at that. And that looks perfect. Okay, so you see how that goes on. And go ahead and repeat that same process on the other side. Get your glue on that tab. Get a little bit out to the edge. Just brush that on there. I want it to look nice and perfect. Okay, you can kind of tuck these in and just pop it right in there. Actually, tucking it in really helps. Get that nice and aligned, push that down. Way too much glue on that, that's okay. All right, now let's fold it onto itself. And just make sure that we've got a straight line there, which we do. And then it's nice and aligned, which it is. Okay, and there we go. Perfect. I'm going to press that and hold that down to make sure that it really gets a good hold. And then the rest of the construction is pretty straightforward, which I'll show you here in a sec. Okay. All right, looking good. All right, so at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take these little tabs here and we're just going to glue them to their neighbor. Okay, so get some glue on one tab at a time here. Maybe just spread that thin. And this is going to be it's not a very steep angle, okay, but it is slightly angled, so just make sure that you're following that angle there. You want it just like that. One thing I don't like about black paper is that white glue really shows. It'll dry clear, but it does somewhat have a little bit of a glossiness to it, but it's okay. It's still gonna look great. Okay, so that's what that should look like, and then we can move on over to the next tab and just repeat. Get that glue right out to the edge there. And again, just kind of following that natural angle, making sure that those two sides are lining up precisely. You don't want to overlap or underlap it. Get it just right. And squeeze that paper, get it to hold. And putting the panels on there too kind of gives you a little bit more thickness for your paper. Sometimes when you're working with just one layer, you might kind of dent the paper a little bit. Eventually that would be covered up by the panel, but I kind of like this because it gives you a little bit more to grab onto. Okay. All right, so just working our way around. I'll grab the next tab here. And again, get that glue out to the edge as best as you can. And there we go. Make sure you get that nice and aligned. And just hold that in place until it sets. And a little bit of excess glue come out of there. That's okay. Just scrape that off as you go. Okay, so got one tab left here. We'll get that glued into place, and then we've got a series of smaller tabs just below that we're going to go around and glue into place as well. And then we'll put our bottom on and we'll pretty much be done with this piece. The top, I think this is the bottom, the top goes together the same exact way, so that should go pretty quickly because we are now pros at assembling this little portion. It's literally the same exact piece, it's just a little bit smaller, so it shouldn't be difficult at all. I've got a little bit of glue that kind of smeared out. I'm just gonna scrape a little bit of that off, pretty it up a little bit. Okay. All right, so you can see these little triangular tabs here. I've got one on my pointer finger here. We're gonna get those glued into place. Just concentrate that glue right towards the edge, and that is gonna get glued to this piece here, right on the back. You can see that. And just make sure that that is nice and straight, up and down. Okay. Now if you want, you can actually put that on your table and use that to kind of help you ensure that you get that nice and flat and straight, and it actually helps it dry a lot faster because you can add more pressure to get that glue into all the little fibers of the paper. Okay, same thing with this. Just tuck it under, get it aligned first, let it get its initial hold, and then you can put it down on your table and push down to get that to set quicker. There we go. I'm just moving right along here. Let's get our glue on this tab here. Get it. I'm just using the tip of the glue bottle to kind of spread that out to the very edge. Okay, get that nice and aligned. And squeeze that down. That looks good. And we got one left here. You can see it there. Kind of flipping it with my thumb. Oh, that was way too much glue. It's okay, I'm just gonna spread that out to the very edge and dab it a little bit so that I don't have a glue explosion here. Probably gonna happen anyway, but that's okay. Yeah, a little bit came out. That's all right, I'll just rub that off. Okay, so this piece is pretty much assembled with the exception of our largest piece here, which is our bottom. Actually, in this case, it would be our top, wouldn't it? No, this is our bottom, I think. No, this is going to be the top. Okay, so when we go to do this, just to make sure that we don't try to stress ourselves out by trying to do too much all at once, let's anchor this piece and get it in place by gluing it down to just one of the tabs initially. Okay, so let me get my glue on this tab here. I'm going to start on whichever side you want. I would do a long side first. Okay, and spread that glue out. There we go. And do your best to get that nice and aligned, nice and centered. Okay, just kind of nudging it to get it in place everywhere. And I can put it down on my table now that it's partially set, and push down to really get it to hold. And that turned out pretty nice. Okay, so we've got one side on there nicely, and maybe be a little more patient with it while it sets. Okay, and we can open this back up and get our glue on the remaining tabs. And the trick here is, again, to get that glue out to the very edges, because that is ultimately the most important part that we want to glue down so it looks nice and finished. And experience has taught me that with large areas like this doesn't always turn out, and we may need to go back in with our little tab piece, that little I don't know, what do you call it? I'll show you. Okay, just push that down, get it nice and centered all the way around, and just try to apply equal force all the way around. And as you're pushing down, kind of run your thumb along the edge as well to add even more pressure and force so that that all stays down. Maybe a little difficult, but eventually you can flip it upside down and then just use your table to apply an even pressure on all those sides. And then hopefully it'll come out really nice for us. Okay, and if not, again, we can always go back in and clean it up. That actually looks pretty darn good. There's maybe one little section that I'm not really happy with, but we can go ahead and clean that up. So I'm going to grab just a little piece of paper and just put a tiny little drop of glue right on the edge, kind of spread it out thin. And I'm only doing it on one side so that I can take this and kind of brush some additional glue on this little area that I didn't do a very good job on. And I'm just going to hold that with my finger until it really sets. Okay, and there's maybe one more tiny little area that I probably could do a little bit of a better job on. And again, like I mentioned, with large areas like this, sometimes it is hard to get it all nice and glued in one shot. So you may need to go in and just kind of tidy it up a little bit. And I'm just going to hold that down with my finger just to make sure that it gets a good hold in that one little section that I wasn't too thrilled with. Okay, but there is that piece. Okay, and now let me take a look at something. Yeah, this is going to be our top. Okay, so that's going to go on top of our clock. But before we do that, we want to find the little strips that are going to go on the edge here. Okay, now for the bottom, they're going to be longer on the bottom, obviously, and they're going to be shorter on top. The ones that are angled are going to go on the bottom as well. So find all the angled ones and get those out of the way, because that's going to go on the bottom. This is for the top. So let's find the strips that are the correct size for the top. Okay. For the top part here, there's going to be a total of 2, and there's going to be a little score mark at one point. Okay, and that's because it goes like this. Okay, so one side's going to go like that. The other side, just got to find the little score mark and fold it right at the score mark here. There it is. Okay, just get that nice and folded at the score mark, and we're just going to glue that on. Now this this paper has a white core to it, and I'm not a big fan of that, so I'm just going to hit that with a little bit of brown or black ink just to kind of cover that up. Okay, I just want to hide that a little bit. There's not really any white in this project. There's a little bit of light color stuff on the front, but as far as this going on to the side with the little black panel, I don't want any white showing up there. So I'm just gonna hide that with a little bit of brown ink or black. You can do black if you want. I think the brown, there's a little tiny little design on this that's like a brownish color, so the brown will work fine. That's fine. Okay, so you can go ahead and get our glue on this strip, and if you're comfortable or not comfortable, you can just do one little section at a time. Let's start by doing the smaller section here. Okay, now this pattern doesn't really have an up or down, so it doesn't really matter. If you do have like a pattern that requires that you're kind of that you kind of follow some sort of orientation up or down, just make sure that you're placing it correctly. Okay, and just get that on there nicely. And this white is showing up here as well. I'm just going to hit that with a little brown. Okay, and we can open this up and get our glue on the remainder of this strip. And just make sure you're getting that glue out to the very edge there as well. We don't want that part peeling up. Okay, and then just plop that right on there. Okay, that's looking pretty nice. Okay, just hold that in place, let it set. That looks good. And just repeat the same process on the other side. Let's get our glue right to the end of that little strip and work our way down. And just grab the other side there. And pop it right in place. Okay, got a little bit of white there. I'm going to cover that up with some brown. looks nice. And let's open that up and get our glue on this guy here. And just plop that in place. There we go. Just hold the ends of it down so that we get a nice clean finish on the ends there. Okay. That looks sharp. Top looks good. Okay. All right, so we can grab our clock, and that's going to go on top like that. Okay, so we're gonna put this on and let this really set for a little while we work on the bottom, and then that way we don't have to worry about it coming undone or anything. So go ahead and put a generous amount of glue right here on the top. Work that glue out to the edges. Okay, and I might need a little more there. We really want this to have a really nice solid hold. So get that glue nice and thick up there. Okay. And can actually do this way. Maybe we can begin applying pressure to this as soon as possible. It's upside down right now, which is fine. Get it nice and centered all the way around. And just push down. Don't push down too hard because you may crease that. You don't want to do that. And there we go. It's looking good. Okay, you can flip that back over. And apply as much pressure as you possibly can without creasing this thing. Okay, because this part at the top might kind of crease a little bit, so be sort of gentle with it. I think as long as you apply even pressure and not too much on one side, you should be okay. So just hold that firmly just for a little bit here until it's partially set, and then we'll just flip it upside down. If you want to put a little bit of weight on the bottom of this, you can, just so that it's kind of adding a little bit more force. I'm going to take my box of inks and just kind of leave it on top like that while we work on the rest of this. Okay, just to kind of add some force so that it sits nicely. Okay, so really all that's left is creating the bottom for this, which is, again, the same thing as the top. We're going to begin by folding all these pieces over, getting our tabs ready. We're going to glue on the little panels, assemble it, and before you know it, we'll be done with this piece. Okay, so again, just get everything nice and folded as far as the tabs go. And don't forget those guys there. All right, let's find our panels. Got these two here, and then these two here. Okay, so this is the tab here. That's for the bottom of the box. This is where you're going to put your panel. Okay, now keep in mind when we put these panels on that these panels are a little bit shorter. Okay, you're still going to have a little bit of a border going around them. Okay, so now one thing to keep in mind with this piece here is there's going to be two panels that go on this. Okay, you can grab this piece so that you don't want to glue this down, but put it down to get an idea of where it's going to sit. It's actually going to be, there's going to be no border around it. You want to make sure that it's nice and flush with the top and the sides, and then get an idea as to where you can place this while maintaining a somewhat even border all the way around. Okay, so that's kind of where I want it. I'm not going to glue that piece down, but I am going to leave it in place to help me with the alignment on this piece. Okay, so let's get our glue on this piece here. And let's get that glued into place. Again, we're not gluing that top part down, we're just using it as a guide to help us with the placement of this piece here. Okay, it's okay if it's not in the perfect spot, as long as you get a general idea of where you can place this to make it look good. That's all you're really concerned with right now. Okay, and that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to move that out of the way for now. Okay, so that's kind of what it should look like. We want to leave a little bit of a gap right at the top there. All right, so let's grab our other piece here. I'm going to bring this piece back. Same piece for both sides. You should have two of them. So we'll just kind of leave that sit there. And we'll grab the smaller little panel here and get our glue on it. Try to work that glue out to the edge as best as you can. Okay, and then again, just kind of use that as a guide as far as your placement goes. There we go. All right, we can move that out of the way permanently now. We're good. All right, and that just leaves this guy here. Same thing applies to this one here. Okay, so this piece here, eventually, once we have this assembled, we're going to put that there. You can just kind of leave that in that spot. And then this piece here is going to go underneath it, but we're going to use that to help us with placement. So get your glue on this piece. Okay. And before you put it down, just kind of get an idea of where the center point is, and then go ahead and drop it in place. And that looks good. Okay, move that onto the other side. I don't know if you guys have elder bugs in your area, but they're all over the place out here. Okay, let's get that more centered on the camera there. And again, just get your glue on the panel. And I'm gonna grip it like this. Get it nice and centered. And just drop it into place. That's pretty good. All right. That looks great. All right, now we can go ahead and get these pieces assembled side to side here. You can tuck these little tabs in, and you can tuck this one back, because what we're going to do is get this aligned like so, just making sure that it's nice and centered there, and then we're going to flip this tab over. So before we do, you want to get your glue on the center tab here, and I'm going to spread that out. Okay, and just get it nice and aligned and centered like that, and just push that tab over. Give it a few seconds to grip initially, and then fold it over this way so that you can kind of take a look at it from this angle and just make sure that it's nice and straight right there. Okay, that looks good. And the same thing on this side. Tuck those in, pull this one back. Let's get our glue on this tab. Just like that, voila. Get it nice and centered there. Push that down for a second, fold it over. Let's take a look and make sure that it's in place, and then push that down. Okay, looking pretty good. Got a little bit of excess glue coming out here. I'm just gonna scrape that off a little. Okay, so just as we did with the top, we're gonna do the same thing with the bottom here. And my glue's super cakey today. Too bad it's not the right kind of cake. Okay. And just spread that out. Okay, and again, just make sure that you're following the correct curve here. And just push that down, get it to hold. And I've got some excess here that I'm going to scrape off and rub away. Okay. There we go. And moving right on here to the next tab, same process. Okay. All right, just hold that in place until it fully sets. And be done here in no time. It's really turning out quite nicely. Sometimes I feel like it's a constant puzzle to figure out the best way to assemble these things. But that's good though. Kind of keeps your mind active, but not active when it comes to actual real life stressors. I'd much rather be perplexed by a little puzzle like this than anything serious in life. And that goes without saying, sure. Okay, last little tab here. Get that glued into place, and then we've got the small little triangular tabs that we need to glue, just like we did with the top. And then we put the bottom on and get that glued to the base of the main portion of our clock. Then we just put the little mechanism in there and make sure you get a good battery in there as well. And you've got your own little timepiece. There's actually, in the Dreaming Tree group, well, before I get into that story, we're gonna glue these little triangular tabs in place here. You can see that one right there. You can see that really nicely there. Just gonna put a few little drops on here. Just make sure you get it out to the edge. Okay, and that looks like too much. I'm gonna spread that out. Okay, so just glue that to the neighboring piece. Make sure that it's, you know, nice and up and down. Should be a straight line, no angle on that. Just hold that in place. I kind of forgot what I was going to say. But one thing I do want to mention is if you are on Facebook, I highly recommend that you pop into the Dreaming Tree Facebook group. It's been growing steadily, and there's so many super talented paper artists in the group that are creating beautiful versions of all of these projects. Everybody's very helpful. It's a very positive place. So just do a search for Dreaming Tree Group on Facebook and join in all the fun. My news feed now is full of it, full of beautiful projects that you guys are submitting, and I will take that over anything political any day. So keep those posts coming. I actually have enjoyed getting on Facebook a lot lately because of that group. Okay, so once we're done getting this glued together, these little triangular tabs, we're just going to put this little bottom piece, that last black piece, onto the bottom just like we did with the top of the clock. Okay, so all that's left to do at this point is get our bottom glued onto our clock. Clock is looking really good so far. Okay, so we're going to glue the bottom on. Now, actually, you know what? Before we do that, we do have some side pieces here to put on. So let's get that done. Okay, so grab these little strips that are left over and let's get those in place. Just make sure that you're getting some glue right out to the very edges so that they don't come peeling off. And just get those glued right onto the little edge there. Okay, could probably hit that with some ink. May as well do that. I'm going to grab the ink for those, and I'm just going to ink 2 at a time here, save a little time. Well, maybe not. I don't like that white showing through on that part right there. So hopefully you're enjoying the process so far. We're almost done here, and the end result is going to be really cool looking, I'm sure. And it's cool because it's an actual functional little piece that isn't just going to sit there. It's actually useful. I know we've got our Alexas and our smartphones and all that good stuff, but there's something about clocks. I know a lot of people still collect clocks, and not to get all macabre or anything, but I actually talked about this in the group today. If there was a zombie apocalypse, well, my only contribution to humanity would be growing pumpkins, but hey, at least as long as you have a stash of batteries, you'll still be able to tell time. Maybe we should rename this to the Apocalypse Clock. I'm just kidding. It's just a really cool piece. And those of you that are really into steampunk, you can definitely jazz this up even more if you want. But typically, kind of shifting gears here, when I'm inking, I don't really use the actual ink pad, but because I'm just hitting the edges, it doesn't really matter at this point. Okay, so let's grab one of the short pieces here, and let's get it on one of the sides. Okay, and just glue that in place. Get it nice and centered there. There we go. And grab my next long piece here and get that in place. It's a really fun little project. There we go. And just hold those ends down until you know that it's set nicely. And last one, and then we've got the 4 little pieces that we used as guides that we're gonna get glued in place as well. I'm debating on if I should do that now or if I should do it later. I think I'm just gonna do it now. I don't think it really is going to make a difference. If anything, it'll probably be easier. Okay, so that is that. And then we've got these with the little angles on them. And we're going to glue those nice and flush up at the top of that base. Okay, so just grip it from both sides. Kind of use your finger to help guide the position. It should be nice and flush with all the sides there. Oops. If you kind of crease it like that, it should just pop right back out. And let's get that glue out of there before we make a giant mess. Okay, so that looks good. That should dry nice and clear for us, so let's not be overly concerned with that. Okay, grab our little small piece here and get our glue on it. And just butt that up to its neighbor and then get that glued in place. And moving right along. Now you get the gist of this. You're more than welcome to kind of skip ahead. But I know many of you, we have our little crafty date nights and you can just hear me talk about nothing, I guess. I just blab half the time, don't I, ladies and gentlemen? All right, and the last piece here, get that in place. Come on, glue. There we go. And just nudge that in between both of those pieces. It should fit nice and precise. Hold that down for just a second. Okay, great. All right, before I put that on, now here, I'm going to show you something actually real quick. You can see, I don't know if you can see this, but here's the part that I didn't ink, and then here's a part that I did ink. It kind of blends better, I think. I don't know if you can really tell, but that's okay. All right, now let's get our little timepiece in here. Okay, this is, we'll include the part number on the website under the supply list section. And get this open. Just be careful because the little arms on these are very, well, they're just kind of delicate. Okay, so as far as the installation goes of the little mechanism, it's very simple. I want to put the battery in first, just because it's a lot easier when you're holding it in your hand. And I've kind of figured out that you don't even need to glue this to anything. The way that they've designed it, it's actually very simple. So when you buy this, you may notice that there's a little washer and a little hex screw that's already on this. There's also a rubber stopper. If you have if it's not too thick when you put your poster board in there, you can use that, but I don't really think it's necessary. You want to make sure that you take the little hex nut and the washer off so that all you have is the little mechanism shaft here. And we're going to feed it through all the way so that the little threads are exposed. Okay, and then we're going to put the washer on that. And then we're going to put the little hex screw on that, and that is actually going to sandwich this mechanism right to the back there. So you don't even have to glue it. So you can definitely replace and reuse it without putting any glue on it. And you can see that it sits in there nicely. It's nice and sturdy. Okay, so once you have that in, you want to go ahead and put your hour hand on. The hour hand has what looks like a little what do you call it? Well, it looks like it almost has like a little hex nut built into it. Okay, and you want, well, for me it's going to be the gold side out. So you just pop that on there, just push it on. Don't push it on too much, you might risk denting it. As long as you feel a little bit of resistance, you know that you've got it good. Okay, then take your minute hand. Okay, and the minute hand has a little hole there at the bottom, and it's shaped, it's not a perfect circle, so it's only going to fit on this thing one way. So just kind of thread that on just like that. Okay, then find your little gear looking little nut and screw that on. That's going to hold that in place. And then grab your little minute hand or second hand and just cap it off right at the top. And you can see that it immediately begins working. And you can use, I guess you can use the little gear inside, or if you want, well, I probably would recommend using the little wheel in there to set the time. And you can see how cool that is. And just make sure that they're not, you might have to kind of bend the arms a little bit to make sure that they're not fighting for position there. But it's about 11:45 here right now. And on the back here, if you want, you can kind of tuck that in so that it stays closed, and then use it to open it. Or put a little pop dot on the back of this so that it closes like that. It's up to you, however you want to do it. No one's really going to be looking at it. Okay, so all that's left to do is take these two little gears here, and I'm not going to do this on camera, but I'm going to put some foam squares on here and just glue those on so that they're elevated a little bit. And it'll give it a nice dimension. And same with this one here. As you're putting these on, just make sure that the gears are somewhat touching as far as all three of these gears, because we want them to work, which they're not really going to work, but you get the idea, just for show. And once that's on there, you're going to want to put glue on the bottom of this and just attach that to the base that we've created. And just, again, maybe put some weight on the top of it here just to kind of help it push down, and let it sit for a little while until you're sure that it's done and nice and set, and your project is all done.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.